Hey everyone, Travis here on day 2 of Dreamhack Winter 2013, joined by Thorin, who's here casting. Well, no, you're doing analysis, right?
Yeah. I'm basically like the Monte Cristo of their desk in many senses because I know everything and I know who's going to win, and people hate me for it.
Yeah. You got that? What is your hype train, Thorin?
My hype train? Probably VeryGames, actually, because for similar reasons to why SKT were the hype train, you know. They have like the best players right now, and they're the most tactically sound, and they just play the game the right way. And when someone plays the game the right way, it's beautiful to watch. And so you want them to win anyway, and then when they're that good, it's like it all lines up, you know.
Well, the Americans just beat them. So, I mean, that seemed pretty cool. What are your thoughts on Americans beating them?
No, the Americans, actually, I thought the Americans would be good. I didn't think they could beat VeryGames, but what we saw in that game was, part of what makes VeryGames so dangerous is they're the best team tactically, but they also have the most firepower at the moment. They have 2-star players who are among the best in the world, and then they have a third player who can sometimes play to that level. Now, the Americans only have 1-star player, so you think to yourself, well, as long as all the stars come out to play, well, VeryGames take it easily. Now, here's the key factor. The best player for VeryGames, he's the best player in the world right now. He's called Shox. But the other 2 stars really faded. They couldn't get into their game. They were totally off. They looked like they didn't think they even needed to. Like they thought this was just going to be a cruise. And so the best player for the NA team, nothing. He's like the genius of the American scene. Think of him as like a double lift if you're a League of Legends fan, okay? He's like got all the mechanical skill, but he's never had the chance to be a world champion, you know. Well, his problem is, he used to be a guy in 1.6 where because he was so good and his teammates weren't, he got a bit jaded and he didn't have the motivation. He knew he wouldn't win the tournament even if he played his best. And so what actually happened in this game was, you saw him as what his potential is. He was playing like above the rim. He's playing his absolute max, and so you had the 2 stars cancelling each other out, and then because the other stars from VeryGames didn't play, it was an even match. And VeryGames could have won it at the end there, but there was actually, I don't know if you saw it, in the very last round, there was a brilliant tactical move, which was a huge gamble, where basically they went into the bomb site of B, and then they kept every other player in the bomb site of B, so it looked like they'd planted there and they were defending it now, but they'd secretly sent one guy back to the other site, and he planted on his own over there. But even when he planted the bomb, the other team, VeryGames, didn't know that the bomb was there because their players stayed there. So they kept thinking they're defending the bomb. So that meant by the time they got in to find the bomb wasn't there, you couldn't have physically gotten across the map, and so they lost the game already. Now, obviously, that's a huge gamble, because if you send the one guy away, and then they even have one guy there who kills him, now you can't get there to plant the bomb again. So you'd have gone to overtime. But that's the key. Because they'd already at match point, it was going to be either overtime or win the game. So that's when you take a risk. You don't take the risk when you can then lose the game and look like an idiot, you know.
So, we've got Complexity, we've got VeryGames. I understand Ninjas and Pajamas also previously considered the best, maybe still by some fans. So where do they stack up right now against VeryGames and Complexity? Is Complexity considered very good right now?
No, Complexity would be more, before this tournament, people would have said maybe the bottom end of the top 8. They wouldn't have been sure where we would expect them to stack up against like the 4th, 5th best European teams, and we'd expect them to be in the mix there. And that might be the case when we get a best of 3. VeryGames and NIP are up here. They're at the next level. At the moment, what makes it interesting is NIP and VeryGames are easily the 2 best teams, and then just below them is Astana Dragons, this Eastern European team. But the reason why it's very interesting is because before they were both the top 2 teams, VeryGames and NIP, but VeryGames lost every single offline game to NIP for like 9 months or something, or maybe longer, maybe about a year. And then what happened is, suddenly, the whole thing flipped, and now VeryGames has won the last 3 series against NIP, and NIP's won 1 map out of the last 7. So suddenly, at the biggest tournament of the year, okay, NIP wins almost every single tournament. I think they only lost like 4 ever. And then the biggest tournament ever with all the prize money, they suddenly might be the underdog to the VeryGames team. So that's like the big drama of the storyline, you know.
Is there any particular reason why it seems like that happened? Or is this just sort of like maybe NIP is just on tilt now since they've lost to VeryGames once, they don't have the courage? Like what do you think has really caused this flip?
Okay, well, if we just talk in-game first, in-game, the crucial thing is what I mentioned before, this guy Shox. Before, VeryGames' old problem when they used to be second, but they used to lose every time, is that their star player was a guy called Kenny S, who was a good AWPer, but their team was so tactical, it was like trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It didn't fit. They kept trying to make him work in a certain way, but his style is he has to be free-flowing. He has to choose what he does, and that wasn't right for their team. So they brought in a new star, this guy called Screamo, had incredible aim. Again, though, they were trying to put him in the wrong scenarios, and it wouldn't work. And he would play incredible before he was in their team. Then in his team, they'd just be like a good player, and they were like, what happened to that guy? Well, then what happened was they took a real big risk. They got rid of their original star, Kenny S, and everyone thought, oh, this is a stupid move. Now you've got rid of a star player, you're going to be even worse. They got this new guy, Shox, who was like a rising star, and like I said, for me now, he's the best player in the world right now. So the key thing was, he became the best in the world, and then Scream kind of that freed him up into his role, and now he's a really good player. Like, he doesn't have to be the main star, he can be the second star. So now they have 2 stars to match the 2 great stars of NIP. And then you add in the tactical component, and now they've got a little bit extra over NIP. I'll give you an interesting out-of-the-game factor, though, that people haven't really thought about. The last 3 tournaments that NIP lost, they've been being followed by a reality TV show. Because the thing about why the TV people want it, wait a minute, this team's from Sweden, we're a Swedish TV company, they're winning every tournament, and there's a huge tournament coming up that's going to be like $100,000. What we'll do is we'll follow them, because they're going to win it, obviously, and then we'll show what a pro gaming team's like. Well, suddenly they've been losing these matches, and part of it's like, you know, they keep saying, oh no, don't worry, we'll win the Dreamhack one, you know, this one doesn't matter, so the drama's there for people, but also, crucially, the biggest star, the best player in the history of CSGO plays for NIP, he's called Get Right. But he's very strange. Usually the best stars are also the most confident. They can't be broken. They have an unshakable confidence. Even when they play someone we know is better, they think that they're better than that. That's what makes them so good. They have that force in game. Get Right is so unusual. He's like a star player in skill, but he has the confidence of a role player. And so he can be quite fragile. And so he's someone who actually gets worried about what fans think about him, and he worries about criticisms. Like if people say he's too passive, then he feels like, oh, I have to prove myself. Whereas he's already the best player in the world. And so I wonder if the whole thing of like, this camera crew from his country is following him, his friends from school will see him, his family's going to see him. If he fails now, oh my goodness, so you see where this extra pressure. In game, he can handle all the pressure in the world. He's a professional. But out of the game, he's never experienced this before.
So anyway, we got VeryGames, we've got Ninjas Pajamas, we've got the Americans here doing some stuff. Well, any other big storylines that are here, or are those pretty much it right now?
The main storyline the whole tournament for everyone is we all feel like the only teams who can win this tournament really is VeryGames and NIP. Astana Dragons have an outside chance because they can potentially beat NIP. So depending on how the bracket draw goes, maybe they could do it as well. But in general, the number one storyline is who wins? Is it NIP or VeryGames? Because even though VeryGames have got this nice little spurt on them now and they're catching up in the head-to-head, if NIP now wins this, that's all moot. Like, who cares if you won 30 grand across these events? I won 100 grand here. Again, I'm back in the lead. The other storylines, though, I'll give you some from day one. There was actually a French team who were only the 4th best French team, and somehow, on this one map, Inferno, they would have these insane comebacks when they would switch to CT side. And what's funny is, when they got to the playoffs, the team they played didn't ban Inferno because I guess they didn't believe it could keep happening, you know. And it did, but they just lost. So that was a really crazy one because they're only the 4th best French team, and yet they finished top 8 here. Now, the other big storyline, I'd say the Americans are one because I would have bet a lot of money they wouldn't get out in 2 groups. It's VeryGames, okay. I would say the other big storyline is Fnatic, actually, because the organization Fnatic is so historic in Counterstrike. They're associated with being champions, or at the very worst, like elite tier. And in CSGO, they've never been that status. Well, this one event, they've got to the semifinals already. So they're already top 4. That's like where you expect Fnatic to be. So now listen, if they somehow could upset one of the other elite teams they're going to face in the semifinals, and if they made the final, that would be an enormous storyline. For Fnatic, for CSGO, to add in like another contender. But for me, it's about VeryGames versus NIP. That's what I came to see.
So from what it sounds like, it would be really cool. Maybe we're going to see Fnatic and Complexity, the Americans, in the finals, right? That's Americans in the finals. That's what I'm getting from you.
I mean, first of all, let me just go ahead and pop that bottle because I think the smartest player on the American team is from Canada. What are the odds, eh? And so, yeah.
Hey, I like the A.
He's a very nice guy. And but the biggest problem, though, for the Americans is that over in their scene, they only have 2 good teams, and they hate each other, and they're made up of the players from each of the different games. The team that just won now was made up of the 1.6 players, and the team who actually went out but are also good were made up of the Source players. And so because they hate each other, they're the only 2 good teams, and they don't want to practice each other. Where have I ever heard that before? Top American teams won't practice each other to get better against International Cup. Never heard that before. New storyline.
I've never heard anything like that.
It would never happen in League of Legends, guys.
Well, League of Legends, I don't even know what that game is.
Yeah, what was I mentioning that for? Okay. So here's the thing with the Americans, though. On that map, they did really well, but what people forget is that was actually the 3rd best map for VeryGames. So what happened is VeryGames thought to ourselves, well, we're so good on all the maps, we can afford to play on that one, you know? We won't necessarily play on our 1st or 2nd best, because you get a map throw each in the map pool. But if it comes to best of 3, in Counter-Strike Global Offensive, okay, best of 3 is actually enough to nearly always decide the better team. Maybe in StarCraft you need best of 5. Maybe in League of Legends best of 5 is better as well. But because of the way the game is structured with like scoring within the maps, it's very hard to fluke 2 maps against the better team. And so the problem you get is if you face NIP or you face VeryGames, first they're good on every map, but then on their strongest maps you cannot beat them. Like yesterday, okay, there was another surprise. Let me think who it was. Let me think who they were playing. Oh, there was the 4th best Swedish team played NIP. And so NiP should have killed them okay. On the first map, on NiP's like third or fourth best map, they upset NiP and won narrowly. But the problem was the second map was Train, which is NiP's absolute second best map. I mean, you obviously eliminate NiP's best map. This map on Train, NiP killed them completely. They didn't have a single chance. They had about 3 rounds in the whole game they could have won, and they just got owned. So you see the problem. Even if you do amazing and you scrape through against the better team on your map, they kill you on their map, and then on the third map, because you've already done the map pick, you've picked your good map, and then you've thrown out one of their bad, it's going to be one that's like even for both of you, and then they're going to be a bit better, you see. So I could see Complexity making the semis. That is possible. And top 4 in the world would be a big deal for an American team. But to beat NiP, to beat VeryGames, this would be a very tall ask.
Excited for them to win the whole tournament. On the other side of this, do you have any thoughts on the tournament? I hear you guys have had some really big numbers. Does it seem like CS is kind of coming back into a really good place? I mean, obviously one of the longest-standing esports, but how does this tournament look for you just in terms of what it means for the scene?
I was pretty sure that CS would never be a premier game again because of the fact that financially it didn't make... I understood why organizations invest in StarCraft 2 and League of Legends because the numbers will always be there for the viewers. So to me, why waste the same money you could have had getting a good League of Legends team, getting a CSGO team and sending them everywhere? But here's the key thing. People sometimes think of me bizarrely as some sort of like a skeptical person or a critic. I don't know why.
I don't know why either.
I consider myself someone who spits hot fire. And so actually, I'm a very optimistic person. So I optimistically
yes.
Yeah, I optimistically thought, well, if they sell these... Okay, in Dota 2, if you buy stuff, it might actually be worth something. You can help the team or whatever. But if you buy these skins that you get with the key, which is what funded this tournament, you buy this key and then some of the donation went to making the prize purse here. I thought to myself, well, all it is a skin. It's just a skin. It doesn't affect anything in-game. So optimistically, I estimated that the intelligence level of most CS fans would be quite high, and they'd go, why would I pay money for what's essentially a transient cosmetic detail? And we are like inner beings who have a spiritual essence. That doesn't mean anything, Travis. The material world outside of us is transient. But actually, it turns out they're a lot more materialistic than I thought. Maybe they're American in that influence, you know. And so I think what happened was I actually overestimated the intelligence and how much money they had to spend. And I've heard a saying, okay, you'll never go rich underestimating people's intelligence.
Does that just sum up this whole conversation? No, I mean, it's a good way to look at the tournament. I'm glad you have such an optimistic outlook. Really kind of went metaphysical there. Anything you'd like to say here at the end?
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I just left my old job. If anyone ever saw me before, I did like my grilled interviews, I did long articles. I was working for a team called Team Acer, and thanks very much to them.
So you're looking for a job?
Well, no, I've kind of already been drafted in because the current site that I'm going to join, they had like a couple of guys. They were just sort of like tabloid. It's a bit like TMZ. And, you know, basically people thought, you know, people went there for the drama. They wanted to see like the upskirts of like famous League of Legends players and stuff. But what they wanted to do was add a bit of credibility. Let's get a bit of class, a veteran in here, someone with a bit of polish to class the place up. And so what they did is they asked those guys, who's better than you? And then they said, well, there's this guy out there. He's very, very good, but it costs a lot of money. And, you know, you're already paying us way too much. But somehow, I don't know if they negotiated their salaries down, what they did, but they got the money together, and I'm going to join this site called On Gamers.
How much money was that you were looking for?
Just lots and lots of money. I mean, really, we could have probably built like about 40 schools in Somalia for this, but I reckon I'll use the money better, you know.
That's Travis here on day 2 of DreamHack Winter 2013. You can check out the rest of our coverage at ongamers.com.